in Tara's great hall, where Con's banners waved, a warrior rose, both fearless and brave. Now Cumhaill his name, with a spear at his side, he founded the Fianna, old Ireland's great pride. They guarded the weak through all of the land, they hunted the forest, did this merry band, men bound by their valour, by wisdom and might, to keep High King Con's realm safe by day and by night. But fairer than all in Erin's green isle was Muirnin of Grace, with a beautiful smile, her neck like the swan and her hair like spun gold. All the sons of Ireland sought her hand to hold. No maiden so lovely had Tara yet seen, her step like the dawn and her gaze like a queen. But fate in her beauty would soon be unkind, for Cumhaill had set her alone in his mind. He gathered his men and he rode through the night to Almu's white hill, where it gleamed in the light. For a father Taj was a druid of fame, whose spells and whose visions all add to his name. To Almu brave Cumhaill did come with pride, and asked for fair Muirn to be his sweet bride. But Tajgin his wisdom beheld in a dream the fall of his house by Almu's white stream. For should Muirn depart with this warrior true, the home of his fathers on Almu he drew. And so with cold fury he turned him away, and bid him no more at Almu to stay. But Cumhaill undaunted would not be denied, and came to fair Muirn at Almu's white side. He met her there with a spear in his hand, the mightiest captain in all of the land. "O Muirn," he said, "I have fought and I've won, for Con and for Erin all under the sun. I've guarded these lands from the raiders and foe, but all that I've done was to win you, I know." He told her of battles, of service and fame, of all of the kings who honor his name. But none of it matters if I've not your hand. Come ride with me, love, o'er the hills of this land. Muirn, though fearful of Taj's bitter wrath, fell deep for the warrior who stood in her path. She gave him her hand and whispered so low, "Wherever you lead, O Cumhaill, I'll go." When dawn broke on Almu, old Taj saw her gone, and fury like storm winds within him was drawn. "He stolen my daughter, defied my command, and cursed shall his name be in all of this land." To Tara he rode, to the High King's great throne, where Con of the 100 did sit on his own. "O Con," cried the druid, "thy captain's a knave. He's stolen my daughter, who I had not gave." The High King was troubled, but law must prevail, for honour in Erin may weaken or fail. If the great break the bonds that the small must obey, then chaos shall darken the land on this day. So Con sent his heralds with message and sword, "Return to her father, the maiden untoward, or leave this green island and never return, or else face my wrath and the Fianna shall burn." But Cumhaill stood proud and answered the king, "I'll yield up my gold, I'll yield anything, but Muirn I'll never surrender nor part, for she is my love and the beat of my heart." Then Con called his captains from hill and from plain, the kings of the Luani, the chiefs of his reign. With grew the mighty and Dacar the red, and young Aid his son to see Cumhaill dead. But Aid, who'd earned the grim name of Gaul, marched forth at the head of the warriors all. The sons of Morna, with fury and pride, swore they'd see Cumhaill blood on the tide. At last at Cnucha, in white mist and dew, the Fianna stood fast for their captain true. The clash of the shields and the cry of the hound shook hilltop and valley for many a round. Cumhaill fought fiercely like storm on the plain. His sword sang of thunder, his spear struck like rain. Though wounded and reeling, he'd not turn away, but stood gainst all odds till the breaking of day. Then Gall stepped forth with his honour held high, no hatred nor joy in his resolute eye. For justice he cried, and the peace of this land, I do what I must, though it weigh on my hand. At last with the stroke, both fierce and true, Gall split through the dawn and cold morning dew. Cumhaill fell at last, though his blade still he bore, and the field drank his blood as he breathed nevermore. Thus fell Cumhaill Mac Cumhaill, the Fianna's first chief, and sorrow and feud brought the land bitter grief, while mourning stood watching, her heart torn away, to see her love fall on that dark fateful day. Then Con raised his hand o'er the blood-soaked plain, and called Gall forth through the dead and the slain. Now captain you'll be of the Fianna's proud band, by right of your courage, by High King's command. Poor Muirin fled through the wind and rain, with nowhere to turn but her grief and her pain. But though Cumhaill lay dead on Cnucha's red plain, his love was not lost, nor his struggle in vain. For deep in her womb does a warrior grow, whose deeds and whose name all of Erin will know. And throughout the ages the bards still proclaim Fionn Mac Cumhaill and his undying fame.
Once was a boy in fair Erin's green land, named Emma, son born of a warrior's hand. For his father was Cumhaill, the Fianna's proud chief, who fell by Gall's stroke in the mist of Cnucha. His mother had fled from her father's cruel eyes, for she feared that the sons of Morna would rise to find little Emma and strike Cumhall's line, and spill the last drop of that captain's blood fine. So she placed him in care of two women most wise, a druid as keen and a sage with bright eyes. They carried him far to sleep bloom's small domain, to raise him in secret through joy and through pain. There raised in shadows they taught him with care, to hunt in the wood and to chase down the hare, to fish in the streams and to throw the bright spear. And the lore of his people they sang in his ear. He slew stags alone with no hound at his side, and ducks on the wing by a stone well applied. You are Cumhall's son, they would often say, and the Fianna shall follow your banner one day. One day he found lads with their hurleys in hand, and they called, join the game if you think you can stand. He laughed, just try not to cry when you lose, I'll win on my own if that's what you choose. He danced through their ranks like a salmon in flight, and scored every goal in the heat of the fight. Give him no teammates, they shouted in shame, but still he outplayed them and mocked them by name. Then angered they struck him with clubs in a pack, but he beat 7 boys and drove the rest back. And when they were asked who has left you undone, they said a fair-haired lad, and thus he was Fionn. His name quickly spread through the forest and field, for none matched his skill with the sword or the shield. But the wise women watch with the growing dread, your fame is a torch that may see you dead. The sons of Morna draw close to your trail, and if you fight them your strength it might fail. But Fionn only cried, let me strike for my kin, yet they told him you must flee swift into the wind. Bide your time, boy, and live to repay, for you'll have your revenge on some other day. Before he would claim what his birthright decreed, young Fionn sought out wisdom to sharpen his creed. To fingers the bard by the Boyne's gentle flow, he came as a pupil with much yet to know. The old man received him and taught him with care, the songs and the stories, the lore rich and rare, the flame of the poet, the art of the tongue, the light of all knowledge and verses well sung. Yet Fingers still dreamed of a prize yet to take, the salmon of knowledge that swam in the lake. For years they kept watch on the pool's quiet face, till Fingers at last caught the prize he did chase. Cook it well, said Fingers, but taste not its skin, for the first who shall eat it all knowledge shall win. But the skin burned his thumb as he turned it in haste, and he placed it to lips and the wisdom he'd taste. Then Fingers saw him and sighed with a smile, the prophecy's yours though I've waited this while. No more can I teach you, your path has begun, go claim your birthright, O Cumhall's own son. westward he rode through forest and fen to seek out his kin, his brave father's men. He stood for the elders, his voice strong and clear. Which of you is Cumhaill, son Tremor, stand near? Oh, now I'm the man, though the years make me bend. Where Cumhaill's band led the last he did send. Since the Battle of Cnucha we've wandered and fled. Now tell us your name, whose blood do you shed? Then Fionn bowed low with a tear in his eye, and knelt at the feet of the men drawing nigh. I am Fionn, he said, son of Cumhaill the brave, and I've come for the name that he died so to save. They lifted him up with their arms open wide, and the fire in their hearts burned bright with old pride. That night there was feasting, song sung to the skies, and tales of bold Cumhaill the warrior wise. Then Cumhaill rose with a grin on his face. It was long ago said that the blood of this race would rise up in time, and the Fianna would turn, that justice would blaze and the traitors would burn. Fionn stood and he swore by the stars up above, I'll carry his name and I'll strike for his love. I'll lead as he led with the spear and with song, and I'll set right the wound that has lingered so long. Then Cumhaill declared, you be wise and be strong. You've the look of your father, we've mourned for so long. To Tara we'll ride, let the High King now see. The true son of Cumhaill has come for the Fianna's key.
Just before summon, with the harvest moon high, and a chill in the air from a darkening sky, up to Tara's green hill, where the kings made their home, rode Fionn Mac Cumhaill with his spear all alone. For there come the 100 High King of the land, in the hall of his fathers held Ireland's command. And Fionn came with fire in his heart and his eye, to claim what was his, or to fight and to die. For he sought the proud Fianna, the warriors renowned, the guardians of Erin, where honor abounds. Once led by his father, now torn and betrayed, Fionn rode to restore them unbroken, unafraid. In the hall of great Tara, the nobles stood tall, with the High King Con in the seat over all. But before he could speak, from the crowd came a sound, and a warrior stepped forth, his one eye darkened round. It was Mac Cumhaill, with a voice cold and clear, who comes to this hall with such pride without fear. State your business, young rider, and speak of your name, for none here may enter without cause or claim. Fionn met his gaze, and no fear did he show, for he knew well the face of his father's old foe. Fionn stood for the throne, and his voice filled the hall. I am Fionn, son of Cumhaill, who once led you all. By blood and by right, I've a claim to this band, and I've come to restore it with spear in my hand. The Fionn are mine by my father's proud name, and I not leave this hill till I've proven my claim. For Erin deserves men of honor and might, and I'll stand for her cause if it cost me my life. The hall fell to silence, no whisper or word, as the name of bold Cumhaill through Tara was heard. The High King then laughed, with the fire in his tone. You were truly your father's, the spirit well shown. But know this, young fiend, though your name may be grand, the Fianna are not passed down by command. No crown nor old blood can win them by birth, but only by proving your valor and worth. Then Gall, son of Morna, with one steady eye, stepped forward and spoke with a slow, thoughtful sigh. The boy is his father's, as fierce and as true. Though I struck Cumhaill down, I admired him too. And now comes his son with that fire in his soul. Let him prove he is worthy to carry the whole. There is one, he said darkly, who haunts Tara's flame. Fionn Mac Cumhaill, the Sigh is his name. Each psalmane he comes with his harp's eerie tune, and lulls all to sleep neath the harvest moon. Then he breathes out his fire, and our hall is laid bare, and no man yet born has withstood him there. son of Cumhaill, can strike down that wraith, and stand through his song with your courage and faith. Then I, who once slew him and bore all his scorn, will bow to you, lad, and call you my lord. Then some night fell with a silence profound, and miscurled like ghosts on the dark hallowed ground. All Tara lay still in a shivering gloom, as death's breath crept soft through the banquet room. The warriors slumbered with dreams in their heads, while Fionn stood alone where the brave feared to tread. He held in his hand his dead father's spear, its head wrapped in cloth, for its magic struck fear. For the fumes from its point could drive sleep away, and steel the young heart for the trial that day. He paced by the hall where the flames once had flown, and waited for Oisin to come forth alone. Then came a low harp song that danced through the trees, and the wind turned to fire on the cold salmon breeze. Through the mist walked a shadow with fire in his breath, Fionn Mac Cumhaill, the herald of death. He pressed to his face the spear's burning head, and the fumes held him fast where all others had fled. Then Oisin beheld him and halted his tune, his eyes like two embers beneath the cold moon. No mortal has stood through my spell till this night, but I'll burn you to cinders before the first light. Then Oisin enraged let his firelight pour, and the great hall of Tara lit up with its roar. But before he could burn it all into the stone, fiends sprang through the flames and stood there alone. With a cry for his father, he cast the first blow, and the spear struck the Fae with a terrible glow. They battled like thunder neath moonlight and flame, flesh against magic, blood calling his name, till at last with a thrust that split through the night, Fionn felled the great Oisin and ended the blight. At dawn he returned with the size head in hand, and laid it before Con, the high king of the land. Through Tara's great hall came a silence profound, till Con rose and thundered, let his name now resound. Then Con rose in splendor and called through the hall, let all men bear witness, both mighty and small. The son of brave Cumhaill has proven his name, the Fianna are his by courage and flame.
When Fionn took the lead of the Fianna so true, their glory shone bright as the great morning's dew. With wisdom and strength he led without peer, and no braver captain was known far or near. His judgments were fair and his mercy was wide, yet none could outmatch him with spear at his side. He gave with a hand like the foam of the sea, and his word was as strong as the roots of the tree. And the Fianna stood proud in the forest and glens, the gardens of Ayr and the greatest of men. With courage and song did they brighten his name, and Ireland remembers the height of their fame. For the Fianna were more than mere soldiers in line, they were Erin's own shield, both of body and mind. The hunters, the poets, the guardians true, the pride of the land and the heart of her too. Oh, strong were the hearts of the Fianna, so bold, with oaths that were iron and stories like gold. Through trial and test their brotherhood true, the pride of old Erin in all that they do. Many there were who would dream of their fame, and many who came to give vow on their name. But few were the men who could stand through the test, for only the finest were counted the best. For the Fianna were chosen through trial and strain, through hardship of body, through test of the brain. They must leap to the brow and duck to the knee, and pluck out a thorn as they ran swift and free. Their braids must stay bound as through forest they fled, no branch could disturb them, no dry twig make them shed. Buried to the waist they faced spears thrown by 9, and show not a wound if they'd stand in the line. And no man was counted nor given his place till he mastered the poems, the songs of his race, for brawn and for wisdom together must stand, if he'd swear to the Fianna and fight for the land. Oh, strong were the hearts of the Fianna, so bold, with oaths that were iron and stories like gold. Through trial and test their brotherhood true, the pride of old Erin in all that they do. Not all were noble, the loyal indeed, for Conan the Bald was a strange breed indeed. Once caught in a fairy spell's terrible snare, they tore off his skin just to drag him from there. A black sheep's fell patch where his flesh had been torn, and he wore it in shame till the day he was mourned. A glutton, a mocker, a coward at heart, yet somehow he managed to play his own part. On the hill of slaughter a pirate stood tall and called out for champions to face him in brawl. The Fianna in jest thrust forth Connald, and the pirate just laughed as his challenge was called. But slyly said Conan, "There's worse at your back," and as the pirate turned he launched his attack. With one sweeping stroke he struck off his head, then fled to his comrades while they roared and they said, "He may not be fearless, nor noble, nor grand, but even the coward has use in this band." Many there stood, famed in story and song, who followed brave Fionn through right and the wrong. His uncle Cumhaill, steadfast and true, who kept to his oath when the dark days first grew. Oisin the poet, his son and his pride, whose words still bring tears though the centuries glide. And Oscar, fierce fighter, whose fury and flame won glory in battle though sorrow his name. And fair Diarmuid of the love spot renowned, whom no woman could spurn and no hardship could hound. And Gull, his old rival, so fierce yet so keen, whose grudges were bitter but his loyalty seen. Then rough McCool, so boastful and wild, and Conan of Lucher, the mischief's own child. For Fionn prized them all, though their tempers would flare, for the oath of their loyalty bound them all there. Oh, strong were the hearts of the Fianna, so bold, with oaths that were iron and stories like gold. Through trial and test their brotherhood true, the pride of old Erin in all that they do. And when Fionn was gone and the Fianna grew old, their story still lived in the songs that were told. For Keelta, Macron and Swift Runner still stayed, one of the last of the Fianna's proud blade. He lived to see Patrick, the saint of the land, and he knelt to his blessing and kissed his kind hand. The last of the warriors, he laid down his sword and gave his allegiance to Christ as his Lord. And Patrick once asked him with wonder and pride, how came the Fianna who stood at Ireland's side so mighty, so noble, that all still proclaimed their honour, their glory, their unbroken name. Then Keelta replied with his eyes shining bright, we protected the weak and we stood for what's right. Truth was our heart and strength in our arms, and we kept every word through both peace and alarms. Oh, strong were the hearts of the Fianna, so bold, with oaths that were iron and stories like gold. Through trial and test their brotherhood true, the pride of old Erin in all that they do.
One fine autumn morning, brave Fionn led a chase, with Gull at his side and Bull Conan at pace. Through oak wood and shadow they rode with the hounds, their laughter and horns filled the green forest bounds. The leaves they did scatter, the stags fled in fright, the sun through the branches spilled golden light. But lo, in the clearing a strange sight was spied, a fawn pure as snow with her head held with pride. Away shouted Conan, let the hunt be made fast, let Bran and brave Skeolang bring her down at last. Swift though she darted through bramble and thorn, the hounds ran beside her, not savage but warm. They circled and played as though guarding their kin, and Fionn saw the wonder that stirred deep within. Then Gull cried, last here's your chance, let her die. But Fionn shook his head with a warmth in his eye. No harm shall befall her, the captain decreed, for no beast of the wood seemed so gentle indeed. So he turned from the hunt, to his stronghold he strode, and the fawn followed after to Almu's proud road. For Almu, his hall on the green wooded height, was a gift from King Con for his valour and might. There Fionn made his home where the wind softly sighed, and the visions of Taj were at last justified. That night as the moon cast her glow on the floor, and the embers still burned by the great oaken door, a rustle, a whisper, a soft silver gleam, and Fionn thought himself in a magical dream. For there stood a maiden more fair than the dawn, with eyes full of sorrow and hair like the fawn. She spoke, I am Sadb of the Tuatha's proud line, the daughter of Derg of the people divine. For 3 bitter years I have roamed as a fawn, through forest and shadow, from dusk until dawn. For the dark druid Dorche cursed me in spite, for spurning his love he stole me from light. But here in your hall was his dark magic stayed, by the strength of this place was his curse now unmade. But still he will seek me, his darkness runs deep. I beg you, great Fionn, your protection to keep. Then Fionn took her hand with a vow strong and true. No harm shall befall while I stand here with you, for I am the captain of Ireland's fair shield, and all who seek safety shall here find it sealed. So Sadb stayed at almu, her fear lay to rest, and love for brave Fionn grew deep in her breast. They walked through the hills and they talked through the night, till her laughter and beauty became his delight. Soon they were wed and the Fianna all smiled, to see Fionn enchanted, love struck and beguiled. For months he would linger, the hunt cast aside, just to stay by her hearth with his radiant bride. And the men of the Fianna would jest and would say, our captain has given his spear for her sway. But Fionn only laughed with his salve at his side, and thought of no battles, no glories, no pride. But word soon arrived of invaders up north, and duty at last called the Fianna forth. Fionn kissed Sadb's cheek and his hand held her own. I return to you soon, you'll not be long alone. For 7 long nights on the rampart she stayed, her eyes on the hills where his banner had swayed. With his child in her womb and her hope burning bright, she prayed for his safe and swift return each night. Till at last on the dawn of the 7th cold day, a lone rider approached through the morning grey. Her heart leapt in joy, my Fionn has returned, and she ran from dear almu where the fire still burned. But the rider's shape shimmered, his face dark with spite. It was fear Dorche come cloaked in false light. You broke from my spell and you spurned me with scorn, but no peace shall you know from the day you were born. And with a dark cry and his black magic's might, he struck her again in the pale morning light. A fawn once again with her soft fearful eyes, he stole her away, his laughter rang to the skies. When Fionn returned, his heart turned to stone, for Sadb was not there, and he stood all alone. He searched through the valleys, the forest, the plain, for 7 long years, but he searched all in vain. No trace of her laughter, no sign of her grace, just the wind in the hills and the cold empty place. But one quiet morning as dawn touched the trees, his hounds found a boy running light through the leaves. A wild little child with bright knowing eyes that sparkled with scythes and the 2-a-day skies. He moved like the deer and he knew every glen, a creature of forest yet something of men. What is your name, lad? asked Fionn crouching low, and the boy only smiled and whispered it slow. I am Oisin, he said, little fawn of the wood. And Fionn understood then as only a father could. He gathered him close, though his heart ached with pain, for he'd lost his sweet Sov, yet her love would remain. And the bards still remember how love once was born, in the hunt and the hills on that fair autumn morn.
When Fionn held command o'er the Fianna bold, and watched Ireland's shores from his stronghold of old, a shout crossed the sea with a thundering din. a boast from a giant who mocked mighty Finn. He roared from the cliffs on the Scottish shore, "No man of your isle can match me in war." Least of all Fionn with his name full of pride, let him face me or run and in shadow hide. Then Fionn, swift to anger and with scowl on his face, marched north to the cliffs with a warrior's pace. He shouted across the sea with a pride in his tone, "Come speak that again, not from the safety of your home." But Benandonner laughed with a bellowing jeer, "If you're brave, little chieftain, then you come on here. I doubt you'd make half of the cold ocean span. You'd be swimming back home to your wife, little man." Then Fionn stood tall with a fire in his chest, "I'll show you the strength that all Ireland has blessed." He stooped to the ground with a grunt and a strain, and tore up the soil with both hands like a chain. He flung it through air with a bellowing sound, a mountain of earth soaring high outward bound. Though his aim was the giant, it fell far and wide, and crashed in the sea with a hiss at its side. Where the earth had been torn, there a dark lake would grow, and thus Loch formed in the hollow below, while the lump in the sea, by wave and by plan, became what we know as the fair Isle of Man. Benandonner roared, "Missed me by a mile. Is that all you've got, you poor Irish child?" Fionn's pride flared anew as he turned from the shore. "I'll not be mocked by a blowhard boor." Now Fionn stomped inland, his pride sorely bruised, his fist clenched in silence, his honor abused. But there at the gate stood his wise, gentle wife, the fair Una, the new love in his life. With young Oisin in arms and a furrowed brow, she said, "Let the brute bark his nonsense for now. What need have we, love, to heed every shout? The loudest of fools are the quickest burned out." But Fionn, red with fury, could not be delayed. "I'll not let that hill ape call me afraid." So he tore Antrim's cliffs with his hammering hand, and stone after stone he flung out from the land. The sea hissed and steamed neath the fury he laid, as a path to the giant by anger was made, till at last stood a causeway, fierce, bold and wide, and Fionn marched alone to the opposite side. He shouted aloud, "Now come forth if you dare," and the cliffs seemed to tremble with salt in the air. But as he stepped close to far Scottish shore, his courage once blazing now burned no more. For there on the rock stood Benandonner tall, with fists like great boulders and shoulders like walls. His breath stirred the clouds, his eyes brimmed with flame, and Fionn, once so fearless, now shrank from the game. Not a word did he say, but turned with a groan, and fled down the causeway of thunder and stone. Back to dear Una he stormed through the door, heart pounding like war drums, face pale to the core. "What happened, my love?" said fair Una with care, as Fionn slumped beside her, all wide-eyed and scared. "The lad's not a lad," he confessed in a moan. "He's a mountain in boots, and carved all from stone." Una just smiled, "Then you'll do as I say, for it's not only muscle that wins out the day." She dressed Fionn in cloth, made a cradle of wood, and laid him inside it as best as she could. Then she baked up a cake with an iron inside, and set it out fresh
with a smile sweet and wide. Soon thunderous steps shook the hill and the glen. Ben and Dunner had come to break poor Finn. She opened the door with a bow and a grin. "Oh, my husband's out hunting, but please do come in. Don't mind the wee child, though he's restless of late. He's teething, poor soul, and he fusses near 8. Ben and Dunner stepped in, bold bluster and pride, but the cradle he passed made him stumble and slide. His eyes quickly widened, his jaw hung agape, for a baby lay growling in monstrous shape. With arms like stout branches, and legs thick as logs, and a head that could terrify wolves from their bogs. The giant grew pale, and his stomach grew cold. If that is the child, what size is the old? He sipped at the porridge, but cracked the stone bowl, and glanced at the cradle with fear in his soul. He gulped down his worry with a shudder and groan, and muttered, "Just tell Fionn I came, then went home." With a crash and a clatter, he fled from the hall, back over the stones of the causeway tall. He smashed it behind him with each frightened leap, till the sea took it back in the cold briny deep. So the causeway now ends where the wild waves play, and the Isle of Man lies where Fionn threw it away, while Loch remains, vast, deep and wide, to tell of a giant and Fionn's wounded pride. Where the shadows fall 'neath the rowans lean, and mist curls low in a twilight green, there ruled a dwarf, a wicked fay, Abhartach from Derg in that cursed day. He walked like a shadow, bent unclean, his eyes like coals and a visage obscene. No child dared play where his banner stood, for tales said he drank not wine but blood. He whispered hexes through the wind and rain, made children die and brought mothers pain. He poisoned the air and stole their breath, and danced with glee with every death. The fields lay bare, the cattle waned, their land grew sick, their bodies strain. Each whispered night brought fear and doubt, no fire could chase the shadows out. With hands in prayer and hearts filled with dread, they sought the great hunter of legends spread. To Fionn they came by moor and fen, chief of the Fianna, the hope of men. O Fionn, they cried of famed Fianna's might, who tamed the flames on Tera's height. A wicked dwarf with pale dead skin holds Tavity's glen in thrall and sin. Fionn's brow is furrowed, his answer slow, a sorcerer cruel is a cunning foe. Their magic strikes even the bold and wise, and they laugh as even heroes die. But still we swore to shield this isle from forest deep to sea-washed mile. So by my hand and spear, he said, I'll face this simp and leave him dead. Through mist and fog the Fianna rode, where birds fell silent and no crops growed. And there atop a cairn of bone, Abhartach laughed on his thorn-stitched throne. He shrieked with glee and raised his hand, the stones around obeyed his command. He cast his runes, he spat a spell, opened wide the mouth of hell. You've come both in to meet your doom, your body shall rot in an unmarked tomb. But Fionn stood firm, his sword held high, and met the dwarf with battle cry. The sky let out a thunder scream as the battle raged on in lightning's gleam. Then a fatal blow with both wrath and grace, Fionn drove steel through its wicked face. They wept with joy, the nightmare slain, and sang as stars lit skies again. But come the dusk a scream was heard, a child was gone, the cattle stirred. For though they'd buried him deep and wide, the dwarf returned at morn and tide. He stood on the cairn with eyes aglow, his voice like wrought from tombs below. You fools, you worms, you dream in vain. No grave can hold what death can't claim. My magic's dark, my soul unbound. Your champions are dirt upon the ground. Now fetch an ox with blood still warm, or I'll feast on the hearts of your firstborn. Again to Fionn the people fled, he walks once more though he seemed dead. Fionn returned and once more death he gave, but again the dwarf rose from his fresh dug grave. Steel won't do, said Fionn with dread, no mortal blade can keep him dead. I'll seek the druids old and wise, whose chants can tell why dead things rise. Through ashwood paths and sacred stone, Fionn walked to where the rites were known. The druids stood in circles tight, their eyes like moons, their robes like night. A warlock like him, once slain, returns from drinking the blood of men. His magic burns, no steel shall stop him, nor holy bell. You must trap him deep in a thornwood shell. Strike him with sword made of yew, then wrap him in thorns, I say to you. Bury him deep, his head upside down, then place a great stone on the cursed ground. Then once again did Fionn ride out, while thunder broke o'er hills would shout. A blade of yew hung by his side, to face the fiend death couldn't bind. Abhartach rose with a shriek of hate, his eyes aglow with cursed fate. Back again you come, you barking hound, I'll drink your blood upon this ground. They clashed like storms on shattered moor, each blow shook the earth's dark core. The dwarf fought fierce with spell and flame, and for a breath none knew who'd claim the day. But Fionn stood fast, his purpose clear, for all of Erin he held dear. He drove the yew blade through the shade, and down the twisted sorcerer laid. Then per the druids' right and word, they bound him where no voice is heard, upside down in thorn-wrapped bed, with stone above his restless head. And so he lies to this very day, the wise men whisper, let it stay. For should that stone be moved aside, the dwarf shall rise and blood shall tide.
Now Diarmuid was famed for his valor and grace, the fairest of warriors, swiftest in chase. No maid could resist him, no foe could withstand the boldest young hero in Fionn's noble band. He left his old training, his blade newly sworn, to follow bold Fionn through forest and thorn. By a river he paused where the cold waters ran, and an old woman wept, wishing help from a man. I must cross, she said, but the current runs deep, and my bones are too frail and the stones are too steep. Others passed on by her with nary a glance, but Diarmuid stepped down with his leather and lance. Through current and chill he bore her with grace, and there on the bank she revealed her true face. Her rags fell away as her shape rose and glowed, hair black as the raven, eyes fierce as she strode. I am Morrigan, goddess of battle and fate, for your kind deed I grant you a gift at this gate. She kissed his fair cheek and she spoke on the breeze, all hearts shall be yours, from maidens to queens. And one day, brave Diarmuid, on this very stream, you'll win a great battle beyond any dream. One day in Winster Fair, where the dark trees grow, Fionn hunted with comrades through briar and snow. They met a dark rider with calm in his air. 'Twas Medak once spared by Fionn's hand fair. I've built you a hall, Medak smiled with pride, where meat is still warm and the fire burns inside. Rest now, great captain, your hunting can wait. The hostel of Quicken trees opens its gate. With laughter and tales they were led through the door, but magic runs deep in the roots of that floor. The walls turned to blackness, the hearth grew cold, and each man stood frozen, caught silent and bold. Their limbs would not move, their voices were bound, like statues of stone they were cursed to the ground. But far from the lodge, in the hush of the glen, Diarmuid stirred sudden from talk among men. A chill touched his heart, a shadow drew near, some whisper of magic that only he'd hear. He mounted and rode through the dusk-silvered wood, where oaken trees tangled and dark waters stood. There by a ford where the waters ran tight, Fianna stood alone in the dim fading light. flashing bright and his face like a stone. He held off a horde as he stood all alone. Mydak rode forth with his malice full grown, but Diarmuid struck fast with a spear through his bone. The traitor fell hard to the rocks with a cry, yet Fianna knelt bleeding, prepared now to die. Too late, said Fionn's son with his last fading breath. They're trapped in that hostel and close now is death. Only the blood of Midak's dark men can break the foul spell and free them again. Then silence the tide carried whispers and cries as more foes approached with death in their eyes. Diarmuid rose slow with his hand on his blade. At the river's edge his last stand was made. Then came bold Fodla with iron in his hand, and stood by Diarmuid to guard the fort's strand. No words did they trade, just a nod and a breath, as the tide of the foe surged eager for death. The water ran red as the enemies pressed, but the two held the line with the strength of the blessed. Blade met with blade in the thunderous din, and the river cried out for the blood of their kin. Then came the sons of the king of Torrent, 3 giants in mail with a deathless torment. They roared down the hill with fury untamed, till Diarmuid struck first and ended their claim. Their blood touched the earth, dark magic undone, and the spell on the hostel was shattered and gone. Fionn and his warriors stirred back to life, their limbs still weak but their hearts primed for strife. Then over the ridge came the last of the horde, the strongest of Midak's allies war scored. Fodla and Diarmuid, their strength near spent, still met them with fury and blades nearly bent. But Fionn took the field with a shout and a leap, and the Fianna returned from their magical sleep. Then Oisin came riding with the warriors grand, and the last foe was broken by the might of their band. When the battle was done and the morning grew clear, the Fianna stood silent in awe and in fear, for blood marked the ford where brave lives had been lost, and valor was counted at terrible cost. Fionn clasped Diarmuid's arm with a pride rarely shown. By your hand we are saved, you stood here alone. You came for your captain, for Fianna my son. You fought without falter till the battle was won. Then Diarmuid looked down at the river's slow tide, and knew it was where the goddess once stood with pride. For there was the ford and the dawn rising red, the deed she had promised, the blood that was shed. No boasting, no song could quite measure the day, but the stones at that crossing still whisper and say, here stood a warrior, fearless and true, whose heart never faltered, whose honor shone through.
By Benirtide, the campfires burned from hunt and march. The Fianna returned, their battles won, their camp was made, and by the sea mighty Fionn stayed. When a warship came on eastern tide, her crimson sail spread long and wide. A warrior tall from her side leapt down, with helm of steel and scarlet gown. I'm sealed from the Sully's throne, he proudly cried, and I rule each land where my feet have tried. And here I've come for tribute due, or else to prove I can master you. In running or wrestling as you will, I'll beat your men and best them still. But if I fail, I'll sail away, name your champion here today. Fionn's brow grew dark, his voice rang clear. No foreigner rules in Ireland here. Our fleetest foot is Cale to zone, said Van swift as the wind he's known. Yet he's not here, so I'll ride out far, to Tara's halls or to Cesh bar. Through a forest dark Fionn rode alone, where tangled boughs hid the sky's own dome. Along a hollow road he came, and met a giant of fearsome name. Yellow of skin, broad-boned and tall, with a tattered coat that wrapped him all. Boots like boats in the muddy ground, each step a splash with a thudding sound. While oh no, Fionn the giant cried, where's the Fianna at your side? Fionn told the tale of the boastful man, and the race to see who will rule the land. The giant scoffed, he'll run twice as well as the proudest words your lips can tell. Your Celtic's feet won't match his stride, but I can beat him, oh let me ride. Fionn laughed aloud at the mud-clad sight. With coat and boots you'd sink from flight, but the carl declared, no man may claim to match my speed in Ireland's name. Call me the carl of the drab coat here, and set me against this man you fear. So back they turned through the forest deep, to Benedare shore where the war hosts keep. Fianna stared, some laughed outright, some hid their faces at the sight. Cale of the Iron stepped in near, what is this thing you've brought us here? My champion, Fionn said calm and plain, to match your speed on hill and plain. Cale's face turned red, his voice grew loud, I'll not race beggars before a crowd. But the carl laughed deep, I'm no beggar true, my blood's as proud as any of you. Name your course, dear heart and day, and I'll meet you there in the boldest way. 60 miles is my least, said Cale, from Sleeve-Lochra to here we'll sail. 'Tis but a stroll, the carl replied, let's go there now with the setting tide. At dawn Cale rose with a scornful grin, while the carl still slept in his hut within. I'll take my start and leave him behind, no beggar man's speed will match mine. He ran through the hills with a pelting pace, dreaming of glory and winning the race. But an hour on the carl awoke, and with breakfast eaten his long legs spoke. He bounded far in a two-legged flight, then hopped one-legged with all his might, past swallow sleeping, past startled deer, the wind itself could not keep near. Soon Cale heard the thundering sound, and the carl was trotting at his side, still sound. Here's a bone, dear heart, you fasted all night, keep your filth, cried Cale, I'll win this fight. Then off shot the carl in a boot-spun spray, till Cale found him again by the blackthorn way. Your coat has no tails, the Iron Man jeered, and the carl turned back for the cloth he revered. He stitched them fast, then tore the ground with leaps that made the skies resound. Past Cale once more in a flashing beat, till blackberries lured him to pause and eat. Cale's hum and buzz came close once more, so the carl stuffed berries in his coat by the score. With a bounding stride, both stout and fleet, he turned for Benedare's shore to meet. By Benedare the Fianna stayed, with anxious hearts the hours weighed. Scouts on the hill cried nothing yet, and the camp in gloom and doubt was set. Some cursed the carl as slow and lame, a clumsy fool, a boastful shame. But Fionn grew grim, his voice was steel, hold your tongues and your doubt conceal. From the hilltop came the watchman's word. At first a dust was all they heard, then a man, and despair took hold. For Cale bears the carl, the watcher told. But he peered again, and his voice rang free. It's the carl ahead, as swift as can be, and behind in the dust runs Cale in vain. The Fianna roared like men unchained. The carl came stomping through the ring, the Fianna cheered like he was a king. Meal he roared for the love of the stars, to fill my belly from throat to jars. He spread his coat on the trampled ground, blackberries crushed in a crimson mound. With meal he mixed them thick and wide, and ate with a gurgle of joy inside. But loud there came a buzzing cry, like a hornet's wing through the morning sky. Cale of the Iron, red of face, charged the carl at a breakneck pace. With sword in hand and wrath in his eyes, he roared as though to split the skies. But the carl scooped up his berry meal mash, and hurled it forth with a mighty smash. Cale's head spun off with a splattered blow and bounced on the ground in the camp below. The carl then tossed it back to its place, but set it askew in a backward face. He bound him tight from foot to hand and asked if he still sought to rule the land. No, let me go, the proud man pled. I'll send you tribute from the Scilly instead. Carl kicked his ship far out to sea. Now trouble Ireland no more, said he. 7 leagues out the vessel flew, and over the horizon faded from view. The Fianna feasted by Benny Dare's tide, with joy and laughter the night they plied. So ends the tale in the bard's old note of Cale of the Iron and the Carl's drab coat.
Well, Fionn Mac Cumhaill at morning light rode out with warriors armoured bright. He led the Fianna proud and true to chase the deer through mist and dew. The Fianna guards of Ireland's grace left Almu Hall, their noble place, but one they left behind to stay. Young Oisin watched while they were away, a poet's son of Fionn the wise, with starlit thoughts and seer's eyes. He held the hearth and kept the flame until the hunters homeward came. The moon began to rise. A woman came with shadowed eyes. Her cloak was worn, her hair was red, a ring of silver upon her head. She moved with grace, though travel-worn, like one both wild and nobly born. Her voice was low, her manner plain, yet something strange ran through her vein. "O son of Fionn," she softly said, "who guards this hall while kin have fled? I seek no harm, nor gift, nor song, but ask for rest the whole night long." Frowned for duty bound him tight to keep the hall through darkest night. Yet as she spoke a silence fell, and in her gaze there stirred a spell. "Refuse me not," she said at last, "or sorrow deep shall hold you fast. By ancient bond I lay this thread, one night to share your fire and bed." He felt the gaze upon his will, a force both cold and aching still. He gave a nod and let her stay, and by first light she slipped away. The seasons turned, the years went by, the fire burned low, the ash ran dry. Yet something stirred in fate's design, a branch long lost would seek its line. One day beneath the forest green, where light through leafy boughs was seen, the Fianna paused in hunt and song, for hoofbeats drew the hush along. A rider came with sun-kissed skin, his hair wind-tossed, his frame was thin, but in his eyes a fire burned bright, a lion's gaze unshaken might. His voice was strange, not of their land, yet clear the words and firm the stand. And Fionn stepped forth, his voice held still, "What brings you, lad, through wood and hill? I've crossed the sea and mountain steep, through nights of hunger, no days of sleep, to find the warrior spoken wide and stand at brave Fionn's noble side." Then Corran male, the bold and brash, let out a laugh both loud and rash. "What's this?" he cried, "a foreign stray, a sunburned pup who's lost his way?" "Perhaps," the youth said with a grin, "but better tanned than bare of skin. And tell me, does that sheep you wear still bleat each time you climb the stair?" The Fianna roared with a wild delight as Corran flushed and clenched his might. But Gall Mac Morna scowled and rose, his hands like stones, his stare like blows. "You mouth too much," said Gall and stood, "come show us if your sword is good." The youth just bowed and met his stance, and leapt ahead before the chance. The blades rang once, then twice, then done. The stranger's sword had near won. He struck the shield from Gall's left hand, and spun him reeling where he'd stand. But then he stopped and held his breath, and spared the blow that might mean death. The Fianna stared in shocked surprise as Fionn looked on with narrowed eyes. Then Fionn stepped forth through fern and shade, his cloak about his shoulders laid. His voice was calm, his bearing proud, though all the fire stood hushed and bowed. "You've mocked our wit and matched our might, you've fought with skill yet spared in fight. So answer now without disguise, what name you bear and from what skies?" The stranger paused and drew a breath, as though he spoke of life and death. "I live beneath the southern sky, where olives grow and eagles fly. My mother raised me lone and proud, she spoke in whispers never loud. She taught me sword and song and lore, but always left one question sore. Who was the man who gave me name? Who was the spark that lit my flame? And when I pressed, she turned away, until one fated bitter day. A boy one day called me a lie, a bastard with no name to die. That night she wept and told me true, your father walks cross ocean blue. His name is sung in Irish air, Oisin of Fionn the poet fair. Then Oisin rose with quiet breath, as if he'd walk from sleep or death. He scanned the boy from toe to brow, and time stood still between them now. I knew a night, he said at last, long buried in the silent past. A voice of flame, a geist laid bare, and silver shining in her hair. The ring of truth is in your tone, your voice, your strength, they match my own. You are the fruit of fate's own art, my son, my blood, my beating heart. Then Fionn with pride and bearing ran, looked round upon his warrior band. Let all bear witness, hear me say, this youth shall take his name today. No longer nameless, cast afar, he is a flame, a rising star. By strength and soul and ancient right, let him be Oscared, bold and dry.
One day on the heights above Cesh waves, Fionn Mac Cumhaill, the bold and the brave, rested in peace while the Fianna ranged wide, his warriors hunting through forest and tide. Braver than any that Erin had known, stronger in might than a king on his throne. Yet oft his heart for wonders burned, and into peril his steps were turned. Then all his men must haste to say, the chief whose heart was bold and brave. Now with Corran the bald and his hounds he lay, the Fianna hunted the glens that day. But under the hill where shadows creep, an evil power began to seep. For Corran watched with fairy eyes, and plotted the death of Ireland's prize. Of the Sheed and the Corran hill, he nursed an old hatred festering still. Long had he hated the captain fair, for some old wrong none now could share. He called his daughters twisted and grim, no fouler brood had the world within. With hair like briars and eyes blood red, and fangs that gnashed where words were said. Behold, said Corran, Fionn lies near, alone on the hill with no shield to bear. Take him my treasures, bind him fast, and this day's hunt shall be his last. Their necks could twist like a bird of prey, their nails were thorns that tore their way. Fur like beasts on their bodies lay, and whiskers bristled in wild dismay. They grinned with mouths both black and white. Fionn thinks he is safe, but doom will betide. Let him come close, step through the green, and he'll wish he had never the fairy seen. Upon the hill where Fionn did stay, a cave of shadows bloomed that day. Its mouth gaped wide with holly bound, and fairy magic thick around. Within three sisters fair were seen, their faces smooth, their eyes serene. On crooked sticks their yarn they wound, enchantment spun with whirring sound. Fionn, never curious, drew too near. Come Corran, see what waits us here. But Bran and Skjolan growled with dread, and Corran cried, turn back instead. Yet forward strode the captain tall, they brushed aside the holly wall, and stepping in the spell was cast. Their strength was gone, their limbs like grass. The sisters laughed with fang and sneer, their beauty fled, their foulness clear. Now Fionn the mighty bound at last, how swiftly the hunter's pride is past. Soon one by one the hunters came, drawn to the hill by the dogs that bayed. Each passed within the holly snare, and each was bound in the hag's foul lair.
Oscar the Bold was struck and bound. Oisin fell fast to the fairy ground. Cailted swift and Diarmuid fair all fell alike to the sisters' snare. The cavern rang with mocking cries. Here lie the Fianna, the proud and wise. No hand to save them, no horn to sound. Their captain chained, their glory bound. One hag licked lips with a twisted leer. Another croaked, none left to fear. The might of Ireland ends this day. In Conran's hill their bones shall lay. But came one more through bark and briar. Mac Morna fierce with ire. Friend and rival to Fionn of fame, yet true to his call in time of shame. Brannan stole and leapt in stride as fury burned in Gaul's fierce eye. The sisters jeered with fang and sneer. We'll kill this one and end this here. There's only one, what strength is he? Each of us three can slay 100 sea. Then silence fell on earth and sky. The Fianna watched, yet none could try. The hags came howling, claw and spell. Their shrieks like screams from the pits of hell. His shield rang loud with every blow. His blade flashed high to meet the foe. 3 times they closed, 3 times he reeled, yet still stood fast behind his shield. Then with a roar he burst their line. His strength like fire, his wrath divine. His blade flashed bright, his shield swung wide. He struck like storm on the mountainside. With one mighty blow did Gaul strike 2, and in Corran's caves 2 hags he slew. The third leapt fast a spider's spring. She clutched his back with claw and sting. But Gaul whirled around with a furious throw and hurled her crashing down below. The last hag arrived on the stony ground, but Gaul had her fast with straps well bound. His sword was high, his voice like flame. Lift this curse or die in shame. I yield, she cried, your wrath I fear. I place my life in your honor here. Spare me, warrior, and I will break the bonds that bind for your mercy's sake. Then swear it now, grim Gaul replied. His blade still pressed to the hag's foul side. Free every man, or by my hand your head shall roll on Corran's land. She swore the oath and loosed her spell. The ropes fell slack, the warriors well. Oisin and Oscar, Fionn the wise, stood free again beneath the skies. One by one the Fianna stood, their strength restored, their hearts made good. They clasped their hands, their voices rang, and praised the stroke that Gaul's sword sang. Then Fionn embraced him stern and grim. My rival, my foe, my friend and kin. Though feuds may burn, my thanks are due. For the Fianna live, all thanks to you.
Of bright Munster, one clear morning fair, the Fianna rode laughing through sun-silvered air. Their hounds chased the deer, all the heather and stone, with Fionn at the front, swift and proud and alone. Through glens rolled their laughter, through peaks rang their cheer, till a shadow appeared that silenced the deer. A figure stood crooked, enormous and bare, with ash on his cloak and a wild sour mare. He bowed low and grinned with a glint in his eye. I'm the Gilla Dacar, and I've come nigh. A servant most hard with no master to keep. May I ride with your warriors to hunt, eat and sleep. Fionn ever gracious gave nod with a smile. Then lose your poor mare to graze free for a while. But the moment her fetlocks touched pasture and green, she kicked at the horses like none they had seen. She bit and she bucked with a devilish glee, snapped reins, broke bones and tore ears with her teeth. Then Conan stepped forth with a curse and a shout.
Tie that beast up, or I'll knock her teeth out. The Gilla just shrugged. I do no horse work. If you think you can ride her, then show your own worth. Conan climbed on, full of fury and pride, and 12 more Fianna took seats at his side. The mare did not stir till the last man was on, then bolted like fire with a shriek and was gone. She dashed through the surf with a scream and a bound, and vanished from sight where the tide pulls you down. The Gilla turned calmly, no fear, no alarm, and walked from the field like he'd caused no harm. Fionn! Conan bellowed from far o'er the foam, if you don't come find us, I'll haunt your own home. Then Fionn clenched his jaw and turned to the shore. We'll not leave our brothers to drown or to war. He summoned the bravest from valley and glen, Diarmuid and Oscar and Gaul with his men. They launched a swift galley on westernmost tide. Its sail cut the mist as the stars became guide. Through days without harbor and nights without light, they followed the path of the mare in her flight. At last they saw land where the sea cliff stood tall, a rampart of stone like a warrior's wall. No path could be seen, so with rope and with blade, young Diarmuid climbed upward through bramble and shade. But Fionn, growing restless, with Diarmuid 3 days gone, climbed up the high cliff with his warriors drawn. They found no path, nor road, nor track, just trees and a cave where the hillside cracked. A rider appeared in a mantle of mist, with eyes like the moon and hands like a fist. He said not a word, but turned with a nod, and led them through stone like a path newly trod. They passed into light, both golden and green, and entered a realm like none they had seen. There stood brave Diarmuid, strong and restored, and Conan with 13 unharmed and adored. Fionn asked with a frown what had passed in his stead, and Diarmuid spoke low of the duel he had bled, of a warrior thrice met at a well each morn, and how his foe'd flee just as night was born. I seized him at dusk as he dove down the well, and we plunged through the deep into lands none could tell. Then Conan stepped forth with his usual flair. The mare dragged us here through the salt and the air. We came to a court where the king knew your name. He said he once served you in battle and fame. A king then approached, clad in golden attire, and Fionn knew his face from old battles and fire. Dear Fionn, said the king, I have summoned you true, to ask for your aid as once I served you. My land is besieged by the champion grim, the same that fought Diarmuid and vanished on a whim. Will you rise for old owner and stand by my side? And Fionn gave a nod, we'll meet him with pride. At dawn's golden edge the war horns were blown, the champion returned with a war band well known. Fionn raised his spear, and the Fianna stood tall, with Sorka beside them they answered the call. The ground shook with fury, the sky dimmed with smoke, as sword rang on shield and the battle awoke. Diarmuid met first with the champion dread, their blades flashed like fire while lesser men fled. Cnucha and Gaul and brave Oscar struck true, and Sorka's bold spears pierced the enemy through. At last came the moment, with one final cry, Diarmuid drove iron through the foe's burning eye. The king bowed to Fionn with gratitude wide. You've honored old friendship with valor and pride. Name any reward and I'll grant it with grace, gold, land or song from the bards of this place. But Fionn only smiled, we ask not for gold. You once served the Fianna in seasons of old. Now I've served you and the debt is repaid. Let our bond be the gift that will never fade. stepped forth with a fire in his stare. You let me get dragged by that monster mare, so I'll have your queen tied tight to its tail, and 14 fine ladies to balance the scale. The court held its breath and the king softly grinned, and the wind turned strange as it whispered and thinned. The sea roared like laughter, the earth spun around, and the Fianna awoke on their home Irish ground. And no cave, no great tower, no mare in the breeze, just the shore of sweet Kerry and salt from the seas. The sunlight returned as if naught had gone wrong, and the birds sang again with a bright morning song. Then Fionn raised his voice as he sheathed his long spear. The world is still wide and the hill of almu's near, so shoulder your arms, lads, we've tales yet to grow, and many more wonders before we go slow.
One day I seen the poet and warrior fair, down to his son with a father's care. To Oscar Bold he spoke as a man of how to live in the Fianna's band. Be fearless, my boy, where enemies tread. Strike swift in battle, raise high your head, yet gentle be to the weak in need. Protect the helpless in word and in deed. Be generous ever with open hand. Guard the poor folk of Ireland's land. If so shall your name when the bards sing true. Be praised as with great Fionn and the Fianna too. One day he came to a warrior's door, renowned in battle, praised of yore. The man received him grave of face, and asked why one of Fionn's race would grace his hall with honor bright. What cause had brought him here this night? Said Oscar, I've heard your fame, of all your strength, your mighty name. Yet too I hear your joy has fled, your laughter gone, your spirit dead. Tell me, warrior, once so grand, why your laughter fades across this land. The man then spoke, his voice weighed low. My story, lad, is one of woe. One day I hunted with my sons all three, brave young men, the pride of me. A hare we spied, swift white as the snow. Through glen and forest we gave it go, from Connacht's hills to Kerry's air. We chased it on to Ulster fair. It darted fast with a cunning grin, till it vanished deep in a fairy's inn. We entered the mound, and there alone an old man sat in his fairy home. He welcomed us in with a kindly air, and spread us a feast with riches rare. He begged us stay with words so sweet, with cups of gold and meats to eat. Though dread was heavy upon my mind, I feared the snares of his cunning kind. Yet I agreed, and me sons did the same. We sat in his hall till sorrow there came. Follow mid-feast, the fairy's guise was cast away before our eyes. The hall grew dark, the laughter grim, and death's cold hand came creeping in. My three brave sons were struck that night, their voices still, their faces white. For in that hall by magic bound, they turned to stone on that fairy ground. Then spoke the Fae with a voice of dread, return not here or join your dead. Depart or share in your children's doom, leave them behind in the fairy's tomb. Each year the hare returns once more. It circles round my mournful door, a mocking shade of the fairies' guile, to steal my laugh and crush my smile. Then Oscar rose with a fiery will. His eyes grew bright and his voice was still. Such evil deeds the Fae have spun have no place here while breath I've won. By Fionn oath, by Oisin's name, by Finn who guards our land from shame, no son of Ireland shall suffer wrong while I have spear and arm still strong. Lead me, warrior, to that mound where Fae and treachery still are found. For justice waits, and I shall see your sons avenged, your laughs set free. Though fearful, trembling, pale with dread, the knight obeyed what Oscar said. Once more they entered the hollow mound, where fairy glamour darkly bound. The selfsame man met them there, with honeyed smile and cunning air. He spied bold Oscar, knew his fame, and hailed the boy there by his name. Come feast, O man of Fianna's might, and share our hall on this fine night. But Oscar rose, his voice was flame. You've cloaked your murders in gentle shame. 3 noble sons you struck with lies, and dare to mock their father's cries. Such treachery vile shall find its end. No Fae shall laugh where Fianna stand. Your halls of glamour I now defy. By iron and truth your shade shall die. The old Fae hissed and then leapt near. With shadow blades its face was drear. His magic curled, his voices wailed. Their spears of mist through darkness sailed. But Oscar's might no trick could stay. His spear cut through their ghostly play. With iron strength and blazing eye, he cast their glamour down to die. Just as the Fae was struck to the ground, a magic waned in the fairies' mound. Its glamour broke, its power fled, its halls grew still, its shadows dead. 3 stones that lingered, cold and bare, stirred once more in the broken air. The knight beheld his sons returned. Their hearts beat warm, their spirits burned. He clasped them close, his voice rang clear. A laugh long lost broke loud with cheer. His joy restored, his sorrow done. Through Oscar brave, proud Oisin's son.
Great was the fame of Ireland's land, her heroes bold, her warriors grand. Fionn Mac Cumhaill with Fianna true, their deeds of valor the whole world knew. But envy stirred across the sea, where lords and monarchs bent their knee. To Diarmuid, the world's proud king, they swore to break the Fianna free. So the king of France with banners held high, the lord of the Saxons with battle cry. Gabhra, Greece's daughter fair, led warriors forth with warriors' glare.
And Lachlan's lords with axe of flame, with countless ships to war they came. Dun said, let Fionn be overthrown, and Ireland green be made my own. They landed fierce on Ventry strand, with countless ships and kings at hand. Their armour shone, their banners flew, the air was thick with war to do. Word came swift to Tera's throne, the High King sent his message known. To Fionn he spoke with troubled breath, defend this isle from war and death. Then Fionn stood tall before his band, and raised his voice with spear in hand. O Fianna, though outnumbered here, shall Ireland's sons give in to fear. You've taken tribute, gifts and gold from Erin's chiefs in days of old. Now pay them back with shield and sword, defend their homes with one accord. The Fianna cried with voices loud, no step will yield, we'll not be cowed. For Ireland's sake we'll fight this day at Ventry strand where armies lay. And there began on Ventry's plain the greatest fight in the Fianna fame. Then Oscar strode with gull so grim, Oisin sang out a battle hymn. Keel to swift and Diarmuid tall, young Kyle and beside him the Fianna all. The host clashed loud on Ventry's plain, with iron and cry and warriors slain. The earth was red, the skies grew dim, as sword struck shield and limb met limb. Forth strode Oisin, son of fame, to meet Bolcan, the French king's name. They fought till Bolcan's mind gave way, he raged like fire wild in the fray. Then Abhartach of Greece so proud, her voice was fierce, her cry was loud. She met with Fionn in battle dire, till Fionn struck down the maid of fire. The Fianna reeled, their strength was spent, their broken lines in anguish bent. Then down came from Ulster fair 100 boys to guard them there. They charged into the battle's flame, though none lived long they won great fame. For by their stand the Fianna stood, and kept the fight with iron and blood. Then Kyle came near with weary face, the men grow weak, they lose their place. The wounded fall, our strength is gone, how can we hold the fight so long? But Fionn stood firm with fearless will, no foe shall break our spirit still. Though odds are grim and hope grows thin, no foreign host shall Ireland win. Just then across the misted plain, strange music rose, a haunting strain. The gods looked down on Erin's plight, and swore to stand with her that night. Through silver fog and drifting dawn, the two of the dead Annan came along. Their shining forms, both fair and tall, with fairy hosts surrounded all. They cried, take rest, let us fight on, we'll guard the land till break of dawn. For the Fianna's cause is just and true, and for Erin's fate we'll see it through. So while the gods held back the tide, the Fianna healed with fairy cauldrons wide. Their wounds were closed, their hunger fed, and strength returned where blood was shed. Renewed again, the Fianna rose, and struck their blows on countless foes. They drove the host with fire and steel, till Europe's kings began to reel. Back to the sea the armies pressed, their banners torn, their ranks distressed, but still stood proud, dared on tall, whose crown declared him king of all. Then face to face on Ventry sand, met Don and Fionn with sword in hand. The world is mine, proud Dare cried, and Erin too shall bow beside. But Fionn replied with flashing eyes, no foreign lord shall claim these skies. This isle belongs to her own band, her people will guard their ancient land. With one great stroke Fionn struck him down, the world king fell his blood to drown. The foreigners fled in fear away, and the Fianna for Erin did win the day. So one was Ventry, the foe was fled, the strand lay strewn with countless dead. The Fianna stood in glory's light, their name made great in Erin's sight. with heavy cost, for many brave Fianna were slain and lost. Among them Cumhaill, so young and brave, whose drowning found a watery grave. His wife Grainne wept with grief untold, her heart grew faint, her face turned cold. Beside her love she laid her head, and at his side she fell still dead. Together they rest in a grave dug deep, and Fianna's warriors bowed to weep. For though they saved proud Erin's land, they mourned the cost on Ventry strand. So sing of Fionn and the Fianna's fame, of battles fought in Ireland's name. But tell as well of love that died, of Cumhaill and Cred on the ocean side.
By Trolley Bay the Fianna lay there, hunting through for the day. Fionn sat proud with his captains near, Gall Mac Morna grim and clear. Oscar bold with his battle stare, Conan the bald with a shaven glare, Keen Kilta swift as the winter gale, and Cnucha the harper small and frail. When sudden the ground began to quake, and the still night's peace the earth did break, from out the dusk with a merry bound, each footfall sent a tremor round. A woman tall as the bending oak, her golden hair in the firelight woke. She laughed aloud at the startled sight, and joined their cheer in the camp that night. Fionn leaned close to Gull with a grin, did you ever see such a lass come in? Gull laughed loud by the sun and sea, no woman so tall was ever to be. Said Fionn, if we stood on our toes just now, perhaps she might hear us from there somehow. Up there, laughed Fionn, can you hear us well, or must we shout what we wish to tell? The giant maid gave a chuckling cheer, I'll stoop a bit so your words I hear. I'm Vivionn of the fair hair, said she, from the land of ladies beyond the sea. My father Trajan wears the crown, with daughters many and few sons renowned. But near us dwells a giant Ardagrim, and I was forced to wed with him. Now I've come to seek famed Fionn the brave, who shields the weak and those who crave a place of safety free from wrong. So here I stand among your throng. Fionn took her hand, both strong and fair, and placed it in Gall's with a warrior's care. Then welcome, lady, to fire and cheer, for no harm shall touch you while we are near. She slipped a helm from her noble head, and a river of golden curls she shed. 7 score tresses the firelight crowned, and the men of the Fianna all gathered round. By the gods, said Oscar, it's no small feat to find a lady so tall and sweet. Come, maiden fair, said Gall with cheer, will you take a hero's share of deer? She shook her head with a merry smile, I'll eat but the portion of yon we file, and pointed to the harper small, whose tunes had just been blessing all. They laughed at that, and the food was brought, with yes and stories the night was fraught. She drank from her hand and splashed the rest, saying only gold-rimmed cups suit best. They roared with mirth at her royal ways, and two struck tunes for the campfire blaze. Gilla told tales of hunts long past, Oscar boasted his spear flew fast. Conan the bald made jests so lewd, that even Gall roared where he stood. The giant made laugh till the embers glowed, and the warmth of the Fianna freely flowed. But laughter broke as the firelight swayed, shadows leapt where the bright sparks played. From the dark there came a thundering tread, and a rider loomed with his cloak blood red. Vivionn's smile was gone in a breath, her voice a whisper edged with death. That is the one from whom I fled, the giant Ada, my fear, my dread. The Fianna shifted their stances bold, the air grew taut, the night turned cold. Stand firm, cried Fionn, guard her well, as through the camp like a storm he fell. In a blur of hooves and a ringing shout, the stranger struck and wheeled about. Shields were shattered, sparks took flight as he tore through the camp and into the night. Then Fionn, red with a wrath like flame, cried out to his men in the hero's name, you have all seen, avenge this deed, or none of you Fianna again shall be. Over the hills in the moon's cold gleam, they chased out the rider toward the stream. Swift as the hawk, the hunters flew, Oscar and Keel to the foremost two. Through briar and bramble, o'er rock and fen, they gained on the giant again and again. Keel to spear tore the shield away, Oscar seized the giant spear in the fray.
But Ada wheeled with a thunderous cry, spray from the shore to the stars did fly. He plunged through the breakers fierce and fast, each stride more wild than the one just passed. A ship lay waiting in western light and bore him off to the edge of night. Back to the fire the hunters came, their prize in hand, their hearts aflame. The red branch shield, the thunder spear, won from the foe they chased in fear. But joy was done when they reached the fire. Vivionn lay in the grass stricken dire, her golden hair like a crown had spread, but her cheek was pale and her warmth had fled. Fine are the arms you've taken this night, but my eyes grow dim, I lose the light. I thank you, friends, for the care you gave, though under your guard I found my grave. Bury me higher where the green hills run, and carve my name for the passing sun. Tell those who ask in years to be, that Vivionn found her rest by the sea. They wept as the dawn broke cold and clear, lacing among the lull to hear. And later the dead woman still thus keep, a giantess rest in her last bronze sweet.
Oh, and Dunnick all's wild northern lands, by Loffin's waters cold and grand, the Fianna strode with hearts at peace. Their hunting done, their labour ceased, their laughter rang through heathered land. Their spears at rest, no war at hand, but Fionn grew still, his keen gaze cast upon an odd shape half hidden grass. A horse's bone long picked and dry, with something pale that switched inside, a maggot white as morning frost curled in the rib that the mare had lost. Now Fionn, their chief of sharpened mind, held gifts no other man could find. For long ago beneath the druid's care, Fionn gasped while silver hair he ate the salad bright and famed, and from that day all knowledge claimed. Now all of life's truth sat deep in his thumb, and when he tasted it then the knowledge would come. Then Fionn with brow both stern and still bit down upon his thumb at will. He saw the bone, the crawling blight, the curse it bore, the coming fight. But beside him strode bold Conan tall, the loudest tongue in Fianna's hall. Why stare, said he, with such a face at a dead beast's rib in this fine place? You look as though it's held some prize, some gem unseen by mortal eyes. Fionn did not glance nor lift his head. The maggot in that bone, he said, if cast into this loch so wide, will grow into a great beast with pride, a monster such as none have seen, to haunt the Loch of Erin Green. Then Conan scoffed, well, let it drink, if thirst it has, then to the brink. He grabbed the bone with careless grin and flung it far o'er Loughin. It splashed, it sank, the ripples spread, and Fionn stood still and shook his head. You may just now, said Fionn at last, but you'll regret that throw so fast. Yet Conan laughed and slapped his thigh. A maggot, Fionn, will heroes die? But Fionn said naught and turned away. There still were deer to hunt that day, through forest deep and mountain bare. The Fianna roamed without a care, but deep beneath the Loch's clear sheen, a silent thing began to gleam. A year went by, the season spun, the hunts were good, the battles won. But on the dawn of that same day came riders fast from far away. Through mire and mist their horses flew, their cloaks were torn, their faces blue. They cried, "O Fionn, hear our despair, there's something foul within the lair." The Loch runs strange, the livestock fade, our hounds are gone, our children stayed. No games, no songs beside the shore, they feel a gaze, they fear what's more. And all began with Conan's throw, the bone that made the darkness grow. Then Fionn stood tall, his face grown grave, will meet the thing that haunts the wave. They came at dawn to Loch inside, with shields in hand and eyes all wide. The waters churned with sudden swell, then up it rose, a spawn of hell. 3 humps it bore, its skin like death, it stank of rotted steam, foul breath. Its eyes were coals, its maw stretched wide, a cart could vanish deep inside. It shrieked, it lunged, its tail did sweep, it dragged men scream into the deep. It snapped up Diarmuid swift and bold, and killed to necks with spear of gold. Then Conan's cries rang loud and clear, but still he vanished drowned in fear. It gulped down men like grains of sand, devouring half of Fionn's own band. The lake ran red with foam and gore, yet still the beast cried out for more, till only 4 yet held their ground. Fionn stood fast with gall renowned, Oisin his son with sorrowed eye, and Oscar young yet standing high.
Then Oscar turned to Fionn and cried, "Grandsire, we cannot fell this outside, but jam its jaws and hold them wide. I'll strike the heart from deep inside." Fionn gave a nod, his voice was low, "Then make it fast and make it so." So Gull stepped forth with steady aim and hurled his spear through throat and fang. It pierced the jaw, the beast gave shriek, its gaping maw could never speak. Nor shut, for Oisin's spear came to and pinned it fast as through it flew. Then Oscar roared and made his leap into the dark, the steaming deep. Through bile and blood brave Oscar tore his blade, a torch through flesh and gore. He found the heart and with a cry he struck it true to make it die. Corran let loose a final cry, then split beneath the blood-red sky. Its belly tore, its lifeblood poured, and crimson stained the Loch's broad ford. The Fianna tumbled bruised but whole, alive within that monster's bowl. The townsfolk came in silence grim, and Fionn looked out across the brim. Once Loch Finn so calm, so clear, now red with blood and battle sear. At tears a quill, what you be fell off begs to be its nameless word. Then Crunan stirred, all slick with grime, half digested sticking slime. He looked to Fionn with sheepish drawl, still picking entrails from his shore. "Well, Captain, seems you had the call. The wee maggot was thirsty after all."
Now Fionn Mac Cumhaill called his Fianna fair, with their wives to his hall on almu there. A feast he gave for a comrade true, to honour brave Gull for deeds he knew. Came Diarmuid, young, strong and wise, Oisin Fionn's son with his poet's eyes. Bold Oscar fierce and Cale tough lead, and Gull near Fionn took an honoured seat. Now Gull once struck down Fionn's father in war, and spilled the blood that proud Fionn now bore. Yet time turned foes to friends at last, though shadows linger from the past. He was second only to Fionn's own name. He stands in honour, strength and fame. They fight as one, yet oft contend, as rival chiefs and bonded friends. The hall rang out with laugh and cheer, the poet sang so all might hear. And Gull leaned over with smiling face, "No thing is lacking in this fine place, save a well-shaped poem," Fionn replied, and the poet Fergus true lips tried. Fergus then began his lay of Fionn's forebears and the deeds of their days. Fionn and his kin gave gifts of worth, rich as the kings of all the earth. Then turned the poet to Gull's proud line, and sang their raids in a voice divine. Gold from Lochland Gull then paid, twice the treasure that Fionn had laid. To harpers, prophets, jugglers bright, Gull gave freely all that night. So much he gave that Fionn grew grim, and silence slowly fell on him. For in Fionn's grand hall before his kin, Gull's open hand outshone his within. Said Fionn to Gull, "How long has it been you've taken gold from the Lochland men?" "A long time now," Morna replied, but he met a gaze both stern and wide. "I thought the rent was mine alone," said Fionn in a deep and measured tone. "Your memory's wrong," Gull answered plain. "Well, let it be known how came this gain. In days when your father made war on me, and called the High King's wrath to be, he drove me out from Ireland's shore, and into Britain I crossed once more. He chased me thence to Norway's land, and banished me with his own hand. To Saxon soil I fled away, but still your father barred me stay. At Cnucha's field at last we met, eye to eye our fate was set. Your father stood with Lochland's band, but still I struck him where he made his stand. I broke their host and drove began to shout and jeer, old grudges rising loud, sharp and clear, till Caeril, Fionn's own kin bold, and Conan the Bald let their fists take hold. Oscar's sons came roaring in, then Gaul's lads joined with eager grin. Oscar himself took up the call, and soon the hall was a thundering brawl. Men went flying o'er leaden boards, wrestling, shoving, trading words. One paused mid-fight to pull a tooth, another swore he'd knock out two. The ladies laughed along the wall. "Stop, you fools," they cried through it all, but none would hear that gentle plea, for this was a fight of the Fianna free. Gaul sat calm in the roaring din, while Fionn sat staring back at him. "Your men you steal," said Gaul with frown. "Do they?" said Fionn, glancing down. "In the matter of weapons," Gaul began, then seized his sword and away he ran out to the yard in the night's cold breath. And Fionn came to with the Fenian shouts. Death they spilled outside in a roaring crowd, still shouting challenges loud and proud. One man tripped and rolled away, another swore he'd make him pay. A boot went flying through the air, a helmet landed in someone's hair. Two men wrestled in the hay, while a third just danced to keep out the fray. Oscar's son tried fighting three, but one just tackled him at the knee. Another poured ale down another one's back, who swore revenge with a bread loaf's whack. A harp was rescued from the floor, though its player slipped right out the door. And in the chaos, no one knew who'd started what or who hit who.
In Tara's hall, the torches burn bright. The lords of Ireland gathered that night. A feast was held, both rich and grand, for the greatest chief in all of the land. For Fionn Mac Cumhaill, the Fianna's pride, had one fair Grainne to be his sweet bride, daughter to Cormac, Ireland's high king. The fairest of maids old Erin could sing. Though Fionn was aged, his name was still grand. His fame was sung in all of the land, and Cormac deemed him worthy still to wed his fair daughter on Tera's green hill. Yet Grainne sat with a troubled mind. Her father's will was not of her kind, though Fionn was noble, famed and true. Her heart grew cold, her spirit withdrew. She thought of years that would stretch so long beside an old man once fierce and strong. Though crowned in glory, his youth was past, and Grainne feared her joy would not last. Then through the hall a warrior came, Diarmuid of the Fianna's name. Bright was his face, his form was fair, a golden star in the torchlight's glare. Her heart leapt up, her breath grew thin, a restless fire awoke within. She watched him laugh, beheld his grace, the firelight dancing upon his face. No lord nor prince could match him there, no knight so proud, no youth so fair. Her heart was seized, her soul ensnared, stood by the Fianna and Fionn grand for their bold deed throughout the land. Through Connacht's hills and Leinster's plain, through Munster wild and Ulster's main, from rocky coast to midland moor, the hunt drove on from shore to shore. Seasons passed and years rolled on, through bitter frost and summer's dawn. Though weary feet and fear were near, their love grew stronger year by year. At last they came to Ben Bulben's height. Snow lay deep in the waning light. The winds blew sharp, the earth was bare, and death rode cold on the bitter air. With weary step and burdened stride, Grainne with child walked at his side. They sought a cave, some shelter near, from storm and frost, from death and fear. But as they climbed through drift and stone, a dreadful sound was heard to groan. From shadowed wood with eyes aflame, a monstrous boar upon them came. Diarmuid knew what fate decreed. No beast but boar could make him bleed. He faced it bold with spear and blade, and through the snow its death was laid. Yet gored and torn, his lifeblood ran. The champion fell a broken man. She knelt beside him, pale with dread, her arms around his fallen head. Then to the Fianna, who drew in near, she cried for mercy through her fear. To Fionn, I beg, though wrath be sore, bring healing now, or he lives no more. But Fionn stood still, his anger grim, his heart held naught but wrath within. Shall I now heal the man, he cried, who stole my bride, my trust defied? Then Oscar spoke, and Oisin too. Shame on the deed you now would do, for once he stood at your right hand and fought for honor in Ireland's land. Oh, Father, turn, let mercy be, and show the grace men look to see. For battles fought and blood once shared, heal him now, let his life be spared. Then Fionn at last his anger stayed, and sought to heal young Diarmuid the brave. He brought the draught, the healing art, but death had stilled the hero's heart. Sorrow then pierced the chieftain's soul, a grief no triumph could make whole. For all his might was now in vain, he could not raise his friend now slain. There Grainne wept on Ben Bulben's plain, her cries like wind through winter rain. The Fianna bowed their heads in shame, and Ireland mourned Diarmuid's name.
In the deep of the wood where the wild stags roam, near Kerry's dark hills and the hawthorn's dome, Fionn Mac Cumhaill and his band took their rest. The Fianna of Erin, the proud and the blessed, brave defenders of Erin, fierce-hearted and free. They hunted by land and they guarded the sea. But now they sat quiet with laughter grown thin, as all eyes turned to the voice of his kin. For Oisin, his son, with a poet's strong tongue, songs of war glory and brave feats were sung. A warrior unmatched with a soul made of flame, both sword and soft lyre bore the weight of his name. Then rose on the wind came a rhythm so strange, a thunder of hooves on the forest's wide range. The Fianna looked up from their feasting and flame, and silence fell swift as the rider came. A maiden she was, on a horse pale as frost, with gold in her hair and her garments embossed. No mortal they knew ever shimmered so bright, like a fairy she glowed like blinding sunlight. Fionn stood at once with his hand on his blade. For what land do you ride, golden lady, he bade. No trespasser rides through the woods of the wise. Now speak of your purpose or flee with the flies. I am Niam, she said, with a gaze clear and wide, of the tooth of dead Annan, where old gods abide. Daughter of Manannán, from beyond mortal song, from Tirnanog, where the ageless belong. I've watched from the mists where the veils softly part, and love took its hold at the beat of my heart. Oisin, great warrior, your name I will bear. Come ride with me, love, to a land free of care. No sorrow shall touch you, no time make you bend. In the land of the youth, where all wounds shall mend. Be my husband, my joy, and forever my song. Come with me, great poet, where you truly belong. The Fianna sat still, their tongues held in awe, at the goddess who offered both love and law. But Fionn rose once more with a fire in his tone. There's always a price where the old gods have flown. My son, he then spoke, gods weave with sly thread. Their beauty is bright, but their bargains bring dread. Yet I'll not forbid you if you choose her path. Just know the bright veil may still darken with wrath. But Oisin just smiled with a fire in his eyes. She's fairer than starlight that spills from the skies. If her land is a wonder where no man grows old, then my heart must be hers, and her hand I shall hold. He turned to his kin, kissed their brows one by one, then held his old father beneath the pale sun. I'll come back, he swore with a voice full of pride, then mounted behind her and off they did ride. They rode without rest o'er the ocean's wild breath, through mist and through moonlight, past danger and death. The white horse flew swift over wave, hill and stone, while Niam spoke sweet of a world all her own. The Fianna grew dim in the depth of his mind, for beauty and promise had made him half blind. Then rose Tirnanog like a flame made of gold, more lovely than even her tales had foretold. A city of song by a star-blessed stream, a place torn from time and made whole by dream. He told them of Fionn, of battles and fame, and the land that he left for a kingdom aflame, with Niamh as his bride and their children at play. He wanted for nothing, or so he would say, but time has a hunger that beauty can't bind, and soon a great weight settled deep in his mind. He sat with fair Niamh neath the silver wood tree. My heart still remembers the land that bore me. She wept but she nodded, her voice calm and low. You may ride Oisin to the land long ago. Take my white steed, let him carry you there, but heed this last warning I give in despair. If ever your foot touches Erin's green land, you'll never return to Tirnanog strand. He kissed her once more, and with tears in her eyes, she watched as he vanished into mortal skies. Rode back with joy
thinking 3 years had passed. But the fields were all quiet, the stone ruins vast. No horn from the hills, no laughter, no kin. The world he had known had grown silent and thin. He saw coming men by a great stone in pain, and offered his strength from the horse's tight rein. He leaned from the saddle with noble intent, but fate took its moment and the girth came unbent. He tumbled to earth with a terrible cry, and the years struck his bones as the gods watched on high. His skin turned to parchment, his beard flowing white. 3 centuries fell on him all in one night. St. Patrick received him with sorrowful grace, and listened in awe to the tale of that place. But Patrick then sighed, all your kin now lie low. The Fianna are gone and the wind does not know. You rode past the veil, but the price was your years. Now only your tale shall remain through the tears. Oisin, heartbroken, wept where he lay. He cursed Tir na Nog as it faded away. And there in the dusk of his last mortal breath, old Erin's great poet was taken by death.
In Almu's great hall, where Fionn's banner waved, there dwelled a warrior band most fearless and brave. The Fianna once guarded all Erin's green land, her shield in war, her steadfast band. But as their fame spread far and true, jealous hearts in Ireland grew too. For Gabhra, crowned as High King then, envied the might of Fionn's noble men. Then Gabhra rose in Tara's hall and summoned forth the clans of all. The Fianna's pride has grown too great, they threaten crown and High King's state. Though once they guarded Erin's shore, their glory serves the king no more. Their coffers swell, their will is free. What need have they of crown or meed? Come, lords of Ireland, join my hand and break this over mighty band. For no king may rule while they still stand. Their word is law through all of the land. Then Fionn rose in almu, though his hair was grey, his voice like thunder on that day. Who kept this isle from foreign band, who shed their blood for Ireland's land. We sought no throne, we claimed no crown, but gave our lives to win renown. And now you say our fame's too high, would you see Ireland's heroes die? If battle must come, then so let it be, but never through shame shall you conquer me. For though I am aged, my heart is true, and the Fianna's might shall answer you. So on the mountain of Gabhra they met, the fate of the Fianna in blood was set. The hosts of Gabhra, many and strong, stood against the band that had served so long. Outnumbered sore, yet proud they stood. The Fianna fought as heroes should. Spears flew high and shields were rent. The cries of war through heaven went. Neither side yielded, fierce was the fray. The plain ran red through night and day. For honor, for crown, for Ireland's fame, each warrior struck with deathless aim.
might. The Fianna's hope in that deadly fight. His spear flashed red, his shield rang loud. He broke the ranks of Gabhra's crowd. Through helm and mail his fury tore. He strewed their dead on Gabhra's moor. Strike, my brothers, hold fast and true. For Fionn, for Ireland, our glory too. The earth itself seemed to shake with dread, where Oscar's path through the battle led. No hand could stay him, no host withstand the fiercest army in all the land. Then Oscar spied the High King near, and shouted loud for all to hear. Gabhra, life chair, face me now. We'll see whose strength shall bend and bow. The army still to watch them meet. Two champions clashed on Gabhra seas. Their spears like lightning, shields like flame. Each stroke resounded fierce, untamed. At last they struck with mortal blows, each to the other's deathly throes. Gabhra fell, the High King slain, but Oscar sank upon the plain. When Fionn beheld where his grandson lay, through the slaughter he forced his way. He cast aside both spear and shield, beside bold Oscar the chieftain kneeled. Oh, Oscar, pride of all my line, no heart more brave was ever mine. Hold fast, my son, oh, linger still. Let not your spirit break my will. But Oscar's breath was faint and slow. His life's bright flame burned dim and low. He clasped his hand, then loosed a sigh, and in his grandsire's arms did die. Old Fionn stood amidst the tide. His heart was crushed, his soul denied. Some say he died of grief and pain when Oscar's blood soaked Gabhra's plain. So fell the Fianna on Gabhra slain. Their blood was spilled, their heroes lain. The green hill mourned, the sky grew red. Ireland wept for her mighty dead. Yet some still whisper soft and low, a secret only the wise men know. The Fianna sleep in the earth's deep core, to guard the land forevermore. And when our need is dire and tall, their steps shall sound through Ireland's hall. The great Fionn Mac Cumhaill shall rise again, to shield our isle and lead her men.